I'm Lior Phillips, host of This Must Be the Gig. We're a weekly podcast that documents everything about the world of live music, speaking with choreographers, costume and set designers, the people who run beloved venues and festivals, and, of course, speaking with musicians about that one gig that changed their lives. Get your peek behind the curtain at consequenceofsound.net, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with audio interview series presented by WFPK, independent Louisville at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Hello to the subscribers out there. Thank you for checking out the series every single week. In fact, 3 times a week as we release episodes around here. If you want to do me a favor, wherever you're subscribed from, please give the series a little rating and a review if you feel so inspired. And of course, if you're not a subscriber, now's a great time to do that as well. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, a new interview arrives in your subscription box. Would love to keep you up to date. And of course, you can do that at all of the big spots with iTunes and Apple Podcast and Spotify and YouTube and Stitcher, Acast, etc., etc. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today, I'm going to be talking once again to Corin Tucker of Sleater-Kinney. Now, we talked to earlier this year when she released a brand new record with her other band, Filthy Friends. And in that interview, she was telling me, oh yeah, there's going to be a new Sleater-Kinney record this year. And it's produced by Annie Clark of St. Vincent. Expect something radical. And that's exactly what we got with The Center Won't Hold. Corin and I are going to talk about what went into the recording and how different it does feel, not just to the fans, but to her personally, where this comes from. She says it actually has roots back to the 2015 record, No Cities to Love. But we will get into fan expectations, not just on a sound, but what we expect from this band to be singing about. We're in a very important moment in cultural history, and that's reflected on this record. In songs like The Future Is Here and Broken, which closes out the record, she'll tell us about that as well. And it also takes a hard look at technology. And in fact, it's the 20th anniversary of the Sleater-Kinney record, The Hot Rock, which dealt with that as a big theme itself. So we'll tie the two together to see how that works as a then and now. And we'll hear how this record speaks going into the 2020 election year. The band plans to stay active. They got a lot in the works, and we're going to hear about that as well. Talking about the album, The Center Won't Hold, it's Kyle Meredith with Corin Tucker of Sleater-Kinney.
Hey, Kyle.
Congratulations on the new record.
Thank you so much.
I know we were just catching up earlier this year about Filthy Friends, and it all seemed like such the dream at that point, so it's been really exciting to see it happen.
Yeah, it's been quite a year.
Yeah, I'm sure it has for you. You know, a lot's been said about this record. So much, it seems like, has been said about this record, maybe more than even the comeback record at this point. And a lot of that, you know, has to do with the sound, of course. I sort of wanted to know, does it feel that different for you? Because, you know, the fans are saying one thing, but does it sound that different to you?
I think that we were kind of playing with some of the synth sounds on our last record, even on No Cities. You know, we kind of dipped our toe into adding synthesizer to some of those songs, even the title track, No Cities. And what I felt like we did is we wanted to expand on that on this record, which we did. And I get that it sounds different to people, but to me, I felt like we were kind of headed in that direction. So it's blending things that we've already done, but it's just pulling people a little bit further into this other world.
You can dress a song up in a lot of different clothes, and at the base, it's kind of the same song in one way or the other. Is there a space where these songs could have sounded like that classic sound? I
mean, I think that, you know, I think live people will hear more guitar, you know, because the voicing live, the guitar is going to come through a little bit more than it probably did on the studio album. So I think people might hear that when they come to the live show, actually.
Did you find it easy then, you know, to stretch your songwriting? Was it much of a challenge to get in there and kind of take it further down that road?
I mean, I think it was actually sort of enjoyable to try writing in a different way with different voices. And sometimes when you're just using the same instrument over and over, you can kind of, get a little bit of like writer's block or like, oh, I feel like I've done this before. But with writing on keyboard or, really letting voice be the driver of the song, it kind of opens up into pushing yourself into trying something different. And sometimes that can come almost more easily.
You talk about writing in different characters. I know one of the songs specifically with The Future Is Here, that becomes a big part of the narrative there, right? With, as you've said, both masculine and feminine?
Yeah, I mean, that was a really interesting challenge for me, was to write something that's physically, that it's like a low range, but it also, is kind of taking on different characters that are both masculine and feminine. And I think that you do that on stage, you play with different aspects of your personality or different characters, but I think rock has always kind of lent itself to playing with gender, and that's something that I wanted to definitely expand on with this album.
That title in itself, The Future Is Here, it sort of sounds like an end of days title, but as I read, it actually comes from somewhere a bit more inspirational with what is Weirdo Night?
Weirdo Night is this amazing theater night that happens in LA, and it's really about performance art. It's about spoken word, comedy, and beautiful singing. This man, Joseph Keckler, was singing these gorgeous, almost opera songs. And it was just so inspiring to see this creative output, that people really poured their hearts out into. And so, it inspired us to kind of try something different with our music and to push ourselves in terms of the characters that would be on this album.
I think that also says something about that whole face-to-face community thing. And what I'm getting at is, last time you and I talked earlier in the year, we talked about the 20th anniversary of the Sleater-Kinney record, The Hot Rock, and how it's sort of put that, fear wasn't the right word, but maybe a warning to the growing technology at the time. And that comes back around on this, right? I mean, these two records, I'm not wrong by saying they sort of share that DNA?
Yeah, there's just a sense of foreboding in terms of our relationship with technology on both albums, and questioning of, where is this taking us? How is it affecting us? That's really the question I think we need to ask. It's not that I don't like technology. I obviously use it in my everyday life, like everybody does. But I think we need to ask what the consequences are and what that relationship is bringing us.
What do you think then, looking back on that, when it was 1999 and the things that we were kind of scared of then? I mean, obviously we've gone further down that hole there, but what does that say that 20 years later there's just more of it? Or does that say anything to you?
I mean, I think that our relationship with technology is definitely deepened. And I think in a lot of ways, we have made advances, things that are important, like cleaner energy and safety, like GPS and being able to locate people when you need to. And those are good advances. I just think that we need to deeply examine how affected we are by certain kinds of technology and what those consequences are.
I mean, I check my social things every single day, but I wouldn't be mad if someone, pulled the plug tomorrow. I just
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's, social media is one of those things that can be very useful, but it also, I think it can be kind of addictive and kind of can bring out the worst in us. So, I think maybe restructuring it might be a healthy thing.
A lot of fans do hold this band very, very close to a personal degree. And I think there are expectations for Sleater-Kinney to say something, these big topics. Do you feel that weight? And does it ever get to maybe sometimes I just want to write a love song?
I mean, I think that we try and give ourselves the freedom to write wherever we're at. But I also think that it's a privilege to be in the position that we're in, to have the kind of audience that we have, and so, it's just part of our DNA is talking about politics and culture. It's just kind of who we are as writers. And so I definitely think that's always going to be part of what we're writing.
I think I was reading, it's probably Pitchfork or something, where you're talking about some of the influences of this record, and you actually mentioned the Depeche Mode record, the Spirit, that came out.
Yeah, I love that album, and it was like such a nice thing to come upon, late in their career, such a good record.
And it kind of hit me in that same way. I mean, Depeche Mode and Sleater-Kinney, sound-wise, maybe you're finally meeting in the middle, closer than you ever have. But they've sort of, had that thing too about the fan expectations, and I don't know. There's not a lot of bands. We want to hear what we want to hear from a band, but there's something about a band like Sleater-Kinney where it just seems like it's more. And I guess maybe you've already answered that with the whole privilege thing, but that I find it really, really interesting.
Yeah, I mean it's intense for sure. But I think also like it's kind of the reason why the live show is so important to us is because that's sort of our moment to play in front of people and to really see who we are, and we draw from the whole catalog. And, we put some teeth and grit and guitar into the whole thing. And I think people will really see there's a through line through all of the album.
I will ask about one more of those songs, too, because the record closes with Broken, which is a really pretty song. But, of course, what you're singing about is not exactly a very pretty moment in history. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that, both in what you're singing about, but also in putting together this style of song, because, again, it does seem different for you all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that song was something that Carrie was working on in terms of, wanting to have this like intense and emotional moment. I mean, the music was very emotional, and it just happened that, we're watching the testimony of Christine Blasey Ford, the night before we went into the studio for that round of recording. And to me, the fact that this man, Brett Kavanaugh, that's so obviously a sexual predator, he's been confirmed onto the Supreme Court. It's like that to me is saying that our system is really broken for women, and it really makes us feel broken, to not feel respected. So that's where that song came from. It came from those feelings, and it just was just a pure expression of that kind of sadness.
It is a very powerful song and a very powerful way to end a very powerful record. This is one of my favorite Sleater-Kinney records. I cannot get enough of it. And again, I want to thank you for the music and congratulate you all on this, especially at an important time like this. I mean, next year, of course, is a very important year with 2020. Do you see you all staying active throughout that, being part of the more in that conversation, I guess, in the more physical sense?
Absolutely. It's absolutely something we want to be a part of. We'll be working with Headcount on our whole tour to help register people to vote, just to encourage people to be active and to have the conversation about where we're going as a country.
Well, Corin, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I appreciate you taking the time today. Again, thanks for the Center Won't Hold and the conversation today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Always my thanks to Corin Tucker of Sleater-Kinney. The new Sleater-Kinney record is called The Center Won't Hold, and it's out now. Now, as a little bonus interview here, I'm also going to include the phoner with Corin that I had earlier this year. Again, this is when she released the second Filthy Friends record called Emerald Valley, and you get a bit more of the conversation that we were having in this most recent interview here. Part 2 of Kyle Meredith with Corin Tucker.
Hi, how's it going?
I have so much to ask you because I feel like there's so much going on with you all right now. But let's start with Filthy Friends and this new record, Emerald Valley. I was so excited to hear that the new record is already coming and everything. And this sort of like this makes it real, right? It wasn't just a one-off project. Was there a point where it really started to feel like a band?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the first record we had more fun and got more out of it as a project than we thought we would. And we were just sort of realizing our potential when it was like, okay, tour's over. And, and so I feel like we were already kind of writing a bunch of songs and thinking about like, okay, well, what will we do for the next record? So this record, I mean, it actually has taken us several years to kind of chip away at. And I'm so happy with how it turned out.
If you knew that it was going to happen, if you knew that there was definitely going to be a second record right away, when did the session start and what were they like?
We rehearsed, a few times here and there, and had like some material ideas. I mean, Peter and I, we kind of get together in Portland and write and try out different songs. And, he had some really cool ideas along with this long, weird kind of Zeppelin-y thing that turned out to be Emerald Valley. And I just started really thinking about that song and what we could do with it. And that kind of was like the germ of what was happening. And so we worked on that, and then we didn't really go into the studio until like last summer. We went into the studio here in Portland, and we really kind of did it in a traditional style where we did all the basics and all the vocals, I think, maybe within like 10 days.
You ever wonder how Peter Buck keeps up with all of the songs? Because, I mean, he's what, like 5 or 6 bands at this point, right?
I know. He's like a machine. I mean, the man he's always got like 4 new songs. He's like, oh, I want to show you this, and I have this idea. Like he just has one of those brains that's always kind of going, and he's always playing guitar and thinking of things. And so
it's just amazing how many riffs must be in that man's head to keep up with it at any certain point, to call out.
For sure.
Oh, so I don't know if, I'm taking a lot, too, from Last Chance County, because coming from the other record, I mean, this was definitely, the first record was definitely a heavy record in plenty of the parts. But I wonder, would you define this as an angrier record than the first time around? I mean, there's a lot of reason for it to be, if so.
Yeah, it's definitely angry, and it's really sad, too. I think the record is really about where we're at. And I mean that sort of specific to the region, the Willamette Valley that we live in, and just witnessing the effects of climate change kind of firsthand here. And because I've lived here since I was 12 years old in the Pacific Northwest. And so, I really remember what it used to be like and how it's changed, and how sad I am that, we haven't done more to, protect the environment and the people that really serve us here, which have long been, migrant workers in this area. A lot of people, come up here from Mexico to pick the food and pick strawberries and, other produce that we have here. And that's kind of the traditional way that our region has survived. And, I really think that we should think about, as a society, treat each other. Yeah. I think that we need to be really, much more thoughtful about immigrants and migrant workers and the people that come here, and a lot of them stay and help create our economy.
Yeah, it becomes very frustrating for me. I mean, I'm in Kentucky. Other than the Ohio River, I'm in a landlocked state, and whereas the internet's the promise of the internet was to make the world a smaller place, but it, the internet seems like a great failed experiment in plenty of ways. But in one of these, that's very frustrating to me because the environment is one of my biggest passions, and when you're not on the coast, you don't see it as much. And to have all of these people around me that just, the word is deny, they just completely flat out ignore that it's ever happened. It's fucking scary is what it is.
Yeah. It's outrageous. And I think the thing is that we're like living with the effects already, like we were warned like, the climate is going to change. Like, no, the climate has changed. Right. The climate has, we are living on this like hotter, weirder planet. And we have to use that as, as a fuel, as a impetus to make serious changes.
So, we'll bridge that into the actual songwriting here because, to write topical is one thing and you could go very direct, but I sort of sense that the trick that you're pulling here is, to use that poetry of seeing the past and kind of bringing it into the present and building it into more stories, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah. I definitely try to like paint a picture, and almost think of it as like a collection of short stories, because I think that is really, what people are drawn to in a song is what is the story of the song. And so for me growing up here and having such a visceral experience of this region, I tried to really paint a picture for people of, what it was like to grow up here, how beautiful it is here and how lucky I think we are to live in such a beautiful place. But I think there's definitely like a range of things going on. And there's definitely, songs about how concerned we are about the change of what's happening as well.
Yeah, because I think the quote that I've read of you talking about Last Chance County is, a teenage girl riding the bus through a depressed Northwest town in the 80s and the frustrations that you saw there. And I think that last point of that line was, I feel like, a really important part, as you're pointing out right here, is to not paint it in those rose-colored glass lens, filter or whatever, but to say, yeah, it was bad then and it's only gotten worse, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, for the lucky few who, have like those super upper middle class jobs, it is like this super great place to live. And it has all these wonderful restaurants. And like, I'm talking about Portland, but I think that there are so many working class people that did not get that, that situation. And it was, it has been really depressed. And I don't think that for those people, they are making the kind of living, right, the kind of like, sustained workable living to keep up with the rise in rent and the rise in housing costs and everything else. It's just, it can't be so like have and have not as it is right now.
So going after these themes in this way, do you find that influences the type of music that you put behind it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've tried to do, it's definitely a rock record. And I think that we've really embraced that. But I think that we do try and do some different moods with it. Like Last Chance County is really like this fun sort of punky song that really came at the end of recording, it's really funny. But there's a lot of really interesting moody songs, like this song called Pipeline, that really is just a total mood piece. It's very kind of dark and slow. And that is something that I love about Filthy Friends, is that everyone is all in for a mood. No one breaks out. Everyone is there to serve the song. And so if I'm, kind of doing this sort of darker poetry thing, everyone's completely all in. And it really is fun to paint a picture that way.
Jumping back in time a little bit, too, because something like Cadillaca, it seemed like that gave you time away from the big issues at hand, kind of to be able to have fun and breathe a little bit. But now you have two fully operating bands, and I don't know, I get the sense that it's more opportunities to actually target those bigger issues than just one album at a time.
Yeah, I mean, the times that we're living in, to me, are pretty turbulent. And I just think that I think this record, the Emerald Valley record, it just really came out of that. And we all really wanted a way to express that. And I feel the opportunities I have. I mean, I've been, playing music for a long time, but life is busy and I have kids and other work and stuff. And so the opportunity, I feel like, to do music with the caliber of the people in Filthy Friends, Scott McCoy, Linda Pittman is drumming now, and Kurt Block, and Peter Buck. I mean, I just felt like, wow, this is a really special opportunity to really stretch myself as a songwriter. And I'm just so proud of what we're able to do. And yeah, and getting there, for me, I like writing all kinds of different songs, but for me, there was some specific things, some political things, some environmental things that I definitely wanted to tackle.
So I'll go into uncharted territory a little bit here, because I do want to ask a few things about Sleater-Kinney as well, in that you've announced that, you had been working on a record and there is another record on the way. Are you finding that those themes are also finding their way onto that record as well?
It's funny. It's yes, but it's such a completely different record. It's a really super psychic record.
Whoa, what does that mean?
It's very much about. It's a little more personal in a way. Like, I think with Filthy Friends, I'm like writing stories and and talking about growing up and stuff. But I think the Sleater-Kinney record, it does touch on some of the same themes, but the characters are even just way more personal and even more upset, I guess.
I mean, two records. This is a lot of writing for any artist to take on, and obviously, this is something that you want to do, and it sounds like you still love to do. Were you doing these at the same time, or was there still some separation in there?
It's funny because there was some writing. Yeah, there was some writing for both bands during a certain period of time where I was like, "Whoa, this is intense." But yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and it's really been. I really try and take what I can learn from each collaboration and use that experience to try something, different, or try different things in each new song that we do. Like Peter, one thing about Peter that's great is that he really writes a pre-chorus for every single song. He does. And I'm like, what is this part? And he's like, oh, it's a pre-chorus. Nashville would call it the ramp up, And Sleater-Kinney had never written a pre-chorus in our lives, but now I'm like, oh, let's try putting a pre-chorus in here, and it's like, just things like that are like fun and interesting, just push me forward to keep trying new things.
And of course, that bridges on to bringing in Annie Clark, St. Vincent into the sessions as well, which I think the line that was put out there was, you all were looking to have some new tools brought in, and maybe that goes beyond what you're saying. Does that just what Annie brings in, or was there more than that?
She's amazing. She's just so great to work with. Wow. Yeah. She brings so much to the table. I cannot even express how, so great she is to work with.
I mean, the line I have on my paper, by the way, is all in one word. Holy cow, this is the coolest news of the last at least 5 years, maybe more. I mean, we'll see how it sounds, but I feel pretty confident in that.
Yeah.
I mean, these are you all and her. I mean, these are two of my favorite artists, of all time right here. So this is a fan's dream, I guess. I don't know. I know this is early, but is there anything you can say about this record? I guess how it differs from the last one. It was such a dream to get to work with Annie. And I think that she really pushed us to try new things as a band. I think people are really going to be excited to hear it. It is different, and I'm thrilled with how it turned out. Is it going to be this year? I mean, are you putting out 2 records in 2019?
Right? That is a super good question. What is going on with you? I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that, I'm 46 and I'm like, oh, wow, I've got to get stuff done. Yeah. Okay.
To be, so involved now with Filthy Friends, and there is one leg of a tour date out there, does that compromise what's going on there at all? Or are you able to kind of still put it all in on both of them?
Oh, no. It's been great. I mean, I think that, that's one of the benefits of doing this for a while is that everyone has learned how to plan.
Right.
After many records, you plan things out, and yeah, it's actually going great.
I'll end here. Hot Rocks just celebrated its 20th anniversary. It all tied together for me, in with the song "God Is a Number." Once we really started getting that, because a lot of the things you're talking about peripherally, I think, in that song, growing up on the internet, getting up on TV, which leads us possibly to the themes that's working on these 2 records right here. I don't know. Do you see that thread at all? Am I stretching
Absolutely.
Here?
No, you're absolutely so right on. I thought about that record kind of a lot this year. Definitely, I feel like we touched on it with the new Sleater-Kinney record. Yeah, there's definitely moments where I was like, oh yeah, that it touches on these same themes of feeling that kind of loss of a real community and in favor of our weird electronic isolating society. I think that's something that has some real downsides for where we were at, and especially where we're at now. Yeah, that's for sure something that we touch on for Sleater-Kinney.
It's interesting hearing that record now, too, a little aside here, because with no disrespect to the classic albums that come before that, I don't think I have to throw any extra praise there that hasn't already been. But Hot Rocks sort of sounds like the band that you become. Does that make sense? Like that's where you really start to get a sense of even how you sound these days. It really, to me, it starts with that one.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we had all this success with Dig Me Out, and it kind of came naturally to us. And then it was like, now what? Like, who are you as artists? And it was like, well, looks like we'll have to reinvent ourselves, and that's so true of just who we are. And I feel like we've done that again in some ways with this new record. We just feel the need to push ourselves, because otherwise it's just, you don't grow as an artist unless you ask more of yourself, I think.
Well, I love everything that you all do. Trivial question here to end. I heard Carrie's book, the Modern Girl book, is going to be adapted for TV. Does that mean that someone's going to be playing you? And if so, do you have knowledge or a wish of who plays Corin Tucker on TV?
Well, actually, that I think it's kind of to be determined. Yeah, and it's not really my call, but I'm sure she will pick someone awesome, of course. It's got to be a weird moment. I mean, I think that would be a weird moment anyway. It's surreal, I guess, is really the word. Surreal, yeah, for sure. And just being like, oh my God, what happened? I'm so old now.
Not at all, especially with the fury that you still pump out in this music. I love it so much. And I always enjoy talking with you, too. Thank you, Corin, for taking the time today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you out there. What it sounds like plenty this year.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Thanks so much, Kyle.
Take care.
All right. Take it. Okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Corin Tucker talking about the Filthy Friends record, Emerald Valley, in that interview right there. Again, Sleater-Kinney back with a new record. It's called The Sinner Won't Hold. And that does it for this one. Before you get out of here, again, I hope you hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening to right now. We put out interviews Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can do that anywhere you get your podcast from. And, of course, if you're already a subscriber, again, please consider leaving a review about the series and giving a rating as well. And after that, head to WFPK.org, where I do a show Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, where you can also find some bonus episodes of this. It's an hour full of new song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, and interview clips. It's WFPK.org. ConsequenceOfSound.net has your music and film news. You can also find me at Twitter at Kyle Meredith and Facebook/Kyle Meredith. And that does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.